Hello everyone, Awkward Car Dude here. I was in Japan a little over a year ago, in July of 2024, and I thought I'd make a video about some of the cars that I saw there. Unfortunately, for some of these cars I'm gonna have to show still photos because sometimes I couldn't get a video, and also for the first few days, it didn't actually occur to me to take any videos. But don't worry, I was able to get videos of most of the interesting cars that I saw. With that out of the way, we'll start off with this Daihatsu Koppen. And here's a slightly larger but still very small sports car, the Yunos Roadster. It looks like an NA MX-5 or Miata, because it is, but in Japan it was called the Yunos Roadster. Yunos was actually its own brand, but it didn't last very long. And speaking of short-lived Mazda sub-brands, here's an Onfini RX-7. In Japan you could get an FD RX-7 badge as either a Mazda or an Onfini. I'm not sure why Onfini is spelled like that. I don't even know what letter that is. Here's a Mark III Supra. I think the Mark III or A70 might actually be my favorite generation of the Supra. I most certainly did not expect to see a Dodge Ram truck in Japan. It's longer than the parking spot that it's in. What's even more surprising is that this was in Nakatsu, which isn't a particularly big city. It's parked next to a Land Rover Defender, which is also a bit unusual to see in Japan. I'm pretty sure this one's actually a UK spec Defender. They were sold in Japan, but most of them were left-hand drive for some reason. Here's a Honda That's. Yes, it was officially called the That's. And another Honda K car with a weird name, the N-Wagen. I saw quite a few cars there with weird names. Like this Nissan Roox Highway Star, parked next to a Honda N Plus box. Here's another That's. And a Mitsuoka Galju. It's spelled like value, but with a G. Classic Mini doing what old British cars do best. Sit in a field and rust. And here's another Mini. A Mitsubishi Pajero Mini. Here's something for all you fellow automobile meme enjoyers. A JDM Peugeot wagon. And speaking of wagons, here's a Toyota AE111 Sprinter Carib. Well, would you look at that? It's another Dodge Ram. This time it's a van. Here's two Nissan S-Cargos. Or as I like to say, Nissan S-Cargo. Something tells me they've been sitting here for a while. This Toyota Mark II looks like it may have been sitting for even longer. There were 9 generations of this car, and for some reason all of them were called the Mark II. Here's some sort of old Rolls Royce outside of a garage. Here's a pretty cool find, a Toyota Origin. It's actually extremely rare. They only built a little over 1,000 of these. It was a luxury car that was powered by a 2JZ. Another Toyota AE111. This one's a Sprinter Trueno. Here's what looks like some sort of Chrysler product dealership. I'm pretty sure that's the first and last Dodge Avenger that I've seen in Japan. There was also a Toyota dealership nearby. And they had this thing. I actually had to look up what it was. Apparently it's a Toyota C Plus Pod. And here's another car I've never seen before. A right-hand drive Corvette. I don't think they even made right-hand drive Corvettes before the C8. They just started building them a few years ago. There is another car with a weird name. The Honda Life Dunk. And a Honda Acti Street. Alright, this is the point where it finally occurred to me to start taking videos. Starting off strong with this Mitsubishi Fuso Canter Guts. Yes, that's actually what it's called. Guts. Older Mercedes G-Wagon, and that's a super clean Nissan Silvia S15. I love the color, too. I went to see if there were any interesting cars in this parking garage, and I found this Toyota MR2, but then when I looked around a corner, I found this. They had a Ferrari 296, a 488, a Lamborghini Aventador, a McLaren, not sure which model it is, Ferrari FF, Porsche Boxster, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, Lamborghini Huracan, Ferrari California, Ferrari Portofino, and a Ferrari Roma. There was also a Cadillac Escalade for some reason. What's interesting is that most of them are left-hand drive, including the Rolls-Royce. The only two that were right-hand drive are the Porsche and the Huracan. Most European supercars sold in Japan are left-hand drive. Same goes for a lot of other nicer European cars and even some normal ones. And it's also the same with some American cars. Yes, the Escalade is actually sold in Japan. Apparently left-hand drive cars are actually seen as somewhat of a status symbol there. Anyway, back to car spotting. And would you look at that? Another left-hand drive car. A C7 Corvette. Finally, another Japanese car. It's another Silvia S15. And here's a Nissan Stagea with R34 GTR wheels. Honda Integra DC5 Type R. Here's a Bentley. And another Bentley. And two Nissan Sunny pickups. And a Nissan R34 Skyline. That's a Mazda MX-30. I'm not sure which drivetrain this one has. It's made as either a fully electric car, a mild hybrid, or a plug-in series hybrid with a rotary engine. Here comes another Ferrari. This one's a Ferrari F12. Mercedes CL500 tuned by Lawrencer. And here's a Volkswagen Golf R wagon. Hey look, it's a Lamborghini! And a Hummer. And a Jeep. I found this pretty funny. A BMW M4, next to probably the easiest police car to outrun. Yo, it's a Fiat Panda. And a Toyota Altezza wagon. Daihatsu Copen X-Play. I'm not sure why it's painted that way, but all X-Play Copens are like that. This I'm pretty sure is a Mazda Bongo, modified to look like a Citroen H-Van. Honda Odyssey Absolute Black Edition. I'm not sure why the Absolute Black Edition is painted white. Maybe it's referring to the cat that was sitting on it? Here's a Toyota Crown Majesta. Here's a left-hand drive BMW E30 and a Fiat 500 Abarth. The Fiat actually doesn't look that small when it's next to a Daihatsu Hi-Jet. And speaking of really tiny trucks, here's possibly my favorite K-truck. The Autozam Scrum. Remember Unos and Onfini from earlier? Autozam was another brand from Mazda that didn't last that long. There goes an R32 Nissan Skyline GTR. And there's a mini panel van. Even on Japanese roads it looks small. This I'm pretty sure is an older Toyota Hiace. And there's an Aston Martin DB11. I went to the G Lion Car Museum, so let's quickly take a look at some of the cars there. Here's an Oldsmobile Model R, also known as the Curved Dash. And here's two Ford Model Ts, and a couple more Model Ts. 68 Mustang California Special, either a 68 or a 69 Corvette. Alpine A110, next to a Ferrari Dino 246. An Alfa Romeo Giulietta Spider, and a Triumph TR4. There's an MGPA, an MGTF, and an MGTD. I recently worked on an MGTD. Here's a 1929 Rolls-Royce Phantom II. One thing this museum had a lot of was old Rolls-Royces. And actually, did you know that the Rolls-Royce Phantom is the longest running car nameplate? 2025 marks the 100th anniversary of the Phantom. Here's a Series 2 Mazda Cosmo 110S. I'm pretty sure the 110S Cosmo was the very first Mazda with a rotary engine. Here's not one, but two Toyota 2000 GTs. There are only 351 of these built. They're crazy valuable too. There are some that have sold for over $1 million. Can you guess what this car is? It's actually a first-generation Nissan Skyline, which at the time was called the Prince Skyline. This one specifically is the Prince Skyline Sport Coupe, and there's a Skyline Sport convertible next to it. They also had a second-generation Skyline. And here's a GTR. But it's not a Nissan Skyline. It's the Isuzu Bellet GTR. I have actually seen very few Isuzu cars, not including trucks and SUVs. First-generation Toyota Celica. And here's an Austin A50. It's probably a Japanese-built A50. They were built under license by Nissan. Alright, now back to cars spotted in the wild. Here's a left-hand drive G-Wagon. And a Honda CRZ that's definitely stock. Citroen C6. Old Jeep Wagoneer. That's an unusual find. This I'm pretty sure is the first-generation Honda HR-V. Land Rover Defender. Lexus LC500. There's an Opel Zafira. I didn't know they sold those in Japan, but apparently they did. They also sold a Subaru version called the TRAVIQ, but I sadly didn't see any of them. Here's another left-hand drive G-Wagon, and another one, Alfa Romeo Giulietta, and here's a pink Renault Kangoo, Jeep XJ Cherokee, and a Renault Wind. There's an older Toyota Hilux, Nissan Figaro, It looks like the cars that I drew in kindergarten. Here's another goofy looking Nissan. It's a Nissan March Rafite. Here's a Renault Twingo GT. Too bad it's not a first-gen Twingo. There goes a Nissan Avenir. This is a Toyota Corona EXIV. Can you guess what EXIV stands for? No, it's not a Roman numeral. It actually stands for Extra Impressive. I would be extra impressed if you knew that. Hey look, a blobfish, Peugeot RCZ. Here's what I'm pretty sure is the only Chinese car that I saw while in Japan. It's a BYD, but I don't know what model it is. I don't know Chinese cars all that well. This really tiny station wagon is a Nissan Racine. And just seconds later it began pouring rain. But hey, at least I managed to get some really cool videos in the rain. Like this one with a first generation WRX. Or this Nissan Juke Nismo. I don't know why the Juke Nismo was made, but part of me is glad that it was. Here's a dark green Daihatsu Copen, and a really nice stock R34 Skyline GTR. Fortunately, the next day the rain had stopped, and I found a Toyota hearse. Yeah, I don't think it really fits in that parking spot. And speaking of parking spots, one interesting thing I noticed about Japan was that most cars, just like this one, actually reverse park. Every car in this lot is reverse parked, and every car in this lot is reverse parked. And it's the same in this one. And this one. And this one. Here's a reverse parked Renault Lutetia. I believe it's the same car as the Renault Clio. This super tiny car is a Suzuki Twin. And there's an Alfa Romeo Giulietta, and another Suzuki Twin. Mitsubishi Delica Space Gear. Ooh, a Mercedes A-Class. It's an odd-looking vehicle, and I've heard that they're quite terrible. And therefore, I kind of have to like it. It's another Mazda MX-30. Here's some weird security robot. Yes, I know it's not a car, but I thought I'd show it here anyway. Nissan Silvia S15. I think this Mitsubishi might be electric, but I can't quite tell. Well, here's something I didn't think I'd see. A 1968 Plymouth Roadrunner. It's a really nice one, too. It's even got the cool pistol grip shifter. There's an Alfa Romeo 156 Sport Wagon. I do love sporty wagons. There's a Saab convertible. This cute little car is called the Daihatsu Naked. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what Daihatsu was thinking. I'm also not quite sure what's underneath this car cover. The shape is similar to a Ferrari 512 BB, but the wheels and rocker panels don't match. But you know what is a pretty close match? The Koenig-Specials Ferrari 512 BB. Also, the tire sizes on the Koenig-Specials version were different from the regular 512 BB. The front tire size on a Koenig-Specials 512 BB is 225, 50, VR or ZR 15. The front tire size on this car, 225, 50, ZR, and that looks like it might be 15 after the ZR. This might actually be a Koenig-Specials Ferrari 512 BB. I'm not certain that's what it is, but it kinda looks like it. And it was also in the same parking area as a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. Here's something way less special, but still unusual. A Mustang. I'm not sure if it's a Japanese market Mustang or not, but JDM Mustangs were left-hand drive. Here's a car you've likely never heard of, from a brand you've likely never heard of, the Will VS. Will was a short-lived collaboration between multiple different companies, and they sold many different products marketed towards younger people. Will cars were made by Toyota, but there were also Will snacks from Glico, Will drinks from Asahi, Will appliances from Panasonic, as well as several other things from other companies. Nissan Fairlady Z Z32. Subaru Levorg STI. Unfortunately, even though there's an STI Levorg, they never offered it with a manual transmission. All of them have a CVT. And here's another Levorg STI. Hey look! A Testarossa! There's a Chevy Trailblazer. I don't think they ever officially sold those in Japan. Bentley Continental GT. Mercedes AMG GT. And there's an Auto Bianchi A1. I'm pretty sure it's the first one I've ever seen. Subaru Forester STI. It's kind of hard to see it, but that's a Lamborghini Urus. One of the lamest Lamborghinis ever made. 70 Series Toyota Land Cruiser, R32 Skyline GTR, and there's a bunch of what look like the standard kart from Mario Kart. Lexus LC500. I'm pretty sure that's a Copel Bonito. It's a retro-styled car based on the Nissan March. And here's a Mitsuoka Vute, which is also a retro-styled car based on the Nissan March. And there's a Chevy Suburban. Just like the Trailblazer from earlier, I don't think those are sold in Japan. But then again, the Escalade is sold there, so maybe. Here's a really nice Peugeot 106 Rally. There's something about older hot hatchbacks that's just really cool. And it's another example of a Japanese spec car in left-hand drive. Ferrari Portofino. And a Chevrolet Camaro. Camaros actually were sold in Japan. In left-hand drive, of course. Dodge Ram van. These were not sold in Japan, but they are commonly imported. They even race them there. I guess it's like how a lot of Japanese vans end up in the US. I even know a guy with an imported JDM Nissan van. And I got to drive it once. Anyway, let's get back on topic. Here's a bright yellow Lamborghini Huracan. There's a smart roadster hiding in that alley. Or as I like to call it, the Smorts car. Get it? Because it's a smart car, but also a sports car? Let's move on. There's another Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I'm surprised how many of those there were in Tokyo. Honda Civic EK9 Type R. I'm surprised how few Honda Civics I saw. Most of the ones that I did see were Type Rs like this. I'm pretty sure I saw more Ferraris than non-Type R Civics. Here's something a bit unusual. It's a Toyota 4Runner. This generation 4Runner, even though it was built in Japan, was never actually sold there. So most likely this car went from Japan to probably the US, then back to Japan. There's an Aston Martin. Maybe a Vantage? I almost missed it, but that's a Lotus Elise. Or maybe an Exige? Probably an Elise. Here's an Isuzu 117. Behind it is another American van. This time a Chevy Astro. Mazda Capella wagon. And another Rolls-Royce Cullinan. Second generation Nissan Stagea. I love the color of this Jaguar XJ. Alright, quick break from cars. We gotta take a look at this demolition site. 3-year-old me would have watched for hours. Okay, back to cars now. Here's a 70 Series Land Cruiser 30th Anniversary Edition. Interesting, a Toyota Tundra. Just like the 4Runner from earlier, these were never sold in Japan, but unlike the 4Runner, these weren't even built there. There goes an R34 Nissan Skyline sedan. Alfa Romeo Giulietta. Here's a Rolls-Royce Ghost, I think. There's the new Toyota Century SUV. Aston Martin Vantage. And finally, a Mercedes A-Class. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video despite my terrible editing and terrible audio. I've lost count how many times I've had to re-record the voiceover. Yeah, I'm not very good at talking. And I also don't have the best microphone setup. Anyway, this is the Awkward Car Dude, and this is the end of the video. Goodbye.